Alrighty folks, I've been called out for another cook-off. This is a chili cook-off done by Collar Homestead. I was called out by Gypsy and the Vanilla Gorilla. So I've got to cook some chili. And g'day everyone and welcome to the channel. Alright, so chili, not really in my wheelhouse. I don't really do Tex-Mex cooking, but let's give it a crack and see how we go. Okay, so beans, if you're cooking chili, I'm thinking there's got to be beans in it. All right, so going to put about a cup of borlotti beans and about a cup of red kidney beans. Measured to my usual exacting standards. Now I'll go over, I'll give these a rinse off just to make sure there's any dust, anything like that taken out of them. Then I'm going to put plenty of water in there, bring it to a boil and let it sit for an hour just so I can soften the beans up, ready for the chili process. Right, there we are, rinsed off. As I said, plenty of water. Yeah, I've got 2-3 inches of water over the top of them. A pinch of salt. And we're going to cover that up, bring it to the boil, just hold it at the boil for a couple of minutes and then just leave it sit for about an hour. And here we are after the beans are soaked for an hour. As you can see, a lot of coloration come out of them. I'm still going to let them soak for the time it takes me to get the meat and onions ready, and then they can go in after that. Now for the meat on this, I am using gravy beef, as we call it here in Australia. It is actually a shank cut from the beef. I'm not sure that you guys have it in America. I think it's just minced over there. It's also called ossobuco. If it's got the bone in it, a wonderful cut, full of connective tissues. When you're slow cooking it, that connective tissue breaks down, becomes gelatinous and absolutely delicious. So that's the meat for it, and of course a couple of onions and some of my homegrown garlic will go in at this early stage. All right, so I'll get the meat up and we'll start browning that off. A little tip for preparing garlic for a dish like this: you can spend ages chopping it up ultra fine. If that's what suits you, that's all good. The other option is you chop it up coarse, grab some sea salt flakes, sprinkle that over the top. And just use the side of the knife. The salt acts as an abrasive and just helps it grind it a little bit better. And you've just got to remember when you salt in a dish that you've already put the salt in at this stage. And there you go, we've got a beautiful garlic paste going on there. Over on the stove, I've got the base from a slow cooker, a little glug of olive oil in it. Okay, once it's warmed up, we're just going to go in with part of our beef. As you can see, it's cut up into bite-sized pieces. Now, I don't want to load it up because I want to get some caramelization on it. People say that fat is flavour. Yes, to a degree, but really caramelization of the meat, the sugars in the meat, that is where the flavour truly comes from. So we want to have a fairly bare pan. We want to fry it up and get a bit of brown colour on it. As you can see, we're getting a bit of caramelisation. We're not trying to cook it through at this stage. We just want a reasonably high heat. We're trying to get those little points of caramelisation, which will add some flavour to it back later on. So we'll take that out and then we'll go through and cook the rest of the meat. Okay, there's our meat all seared up. As you can see, lots of nice brown coloration on it. And our pan is pretty dry after doing that. So we're gonna add a glug more oil in there. Turn the heat right down because it was up because it was up at full whack, just to get that browning going. Pan's still going to be hot, but it'll come down as the other things start getting introduced. So in we go with our onion. And that'll start lifting some of those meat juices up. We want to cook that to a little bit of caramelization, a little bit of translucency. So I'm not putting any salt in because the salt will stop it from caramelizing. Okay, now we've got the colour in the onions. Now it's time to start adding the flavours to it. So, a few spoons of tomato paste. Tomato paste, ideally you want to cook the rawness out of it before you do the slow cook. Now I'll add some chili and the garlic that we prepared. You don't want to put the garlic in too early because garlic can burn and becomes bitter when it burns. So if you put it in with the onion and you're looking for that caramelization, you end up with bitter garlic. Next up, we're going to add some cumin in. That's just ground cumin seeds. A wee bit of ground cinnamon. Freshly ground pepper. And by adding a bit at a time and mixing it into this tomato paste that we're cooking the rawness out of, it helps protect the herbs. It means that they don't get overcooked. Okay, also going to add in some of my beautiful homemade smoked paprika. This has got a little bit of kick to it, and so along with the chilies, it'll give me the heat that I'm after, and also adds that beautiful smoky flavor to it. If you had smell-o-vision right now, you would be in love. I'm not going to add any salt at this stage because we've got the salt in the garlic. So once it cooks a bit, then I'll taste it and check it for salt levels. What I am going to do, because we've cooked the tomato paste in here, is just deglaze the pan a little with a bit of red wine. And back in we go with our browned meat. I'll add in a couple of cans or a couple of jars of my homemade diced tomato. And that's starting to look the goods right now. And I'm also going to add in some tomato passata, which to the Americans that would be just a plain tomato sauce. Not one can out of my garden because I haven't yet got around to processing last year's tomatoes into a sauce. Must do that before I start getting more tomatoes. A little bit of water in there to rinse it out. And lastly, before we go on the slow cooker, we're going to add our beans in. Now I am still going to add some capsicum or peppers into this. I don't want to add them too early because I'm slow cooking. If I add them too early, they're just going to turn to mush, which is not what I'm after. So I will give this a couple of hours in the slow cooker, and then I'll add the peppers in. And a couple of hours in, and it's time to have a look at where we're at. Looking good. Okay, cooking away nicely. Let's Give it a mix up. Now before we add the peppers in, it's time to test it for flavour. See how we get on with the beef. The beef's getting there, probably needs about another hour, hour and a half. Starting to get to that falling apart stage. But yeah, it just needs a little bit more to take a little bit firmness out of it. All right, flavour wise, we do need just a wee bit more salt, I think. Also some sugar to balance up the spice. So I'll put a couple of spoons brown sugar in there. Mix that through. Much the same as I'd balance the cooking with Indonesian or Chinese cooking. I'm going to do it with this. I want to balance the sweet, the spice, the salt. It's not really any sourness to it, which is an element in the Chinese and Indonesian cooking. And we've got the smokiness instead of umami. All right, that should get us pretty close with our flavors. So I'll just check it again as we move along. And now it's time to add our peppers in. So they will cook in the time that we got left, but they're not going to cook down to nothing, which if I had to put them in at the start of the slow cook, they would have cooked down to nothing. I'd rather have a bit of pepper left in there. Give it a little while, taste test it as we go. Just make sure that the sugar I put in there works, the salt works and everything like that. So just keep an eye on the flavors as we go through. And give it the rest of its cook time. Here we are at the end of the cook time. As you can see, all cooked together deliciously. Balance the flavors as we go. And the beef is just perfect. All right, let's plate it up. All right, so just serving it up with some rice. Yeah, absolutely gorgeous chili in there. I like a bit of cheese with my chili. And here's some pumpkin bread that I made up the other day. And there's our gorgeous little meal. Okay, and the all important question of how does it taste? Let's get a piece of that beef. As you can see, that's absolutely fork tender now. Plenty of beans, plenty of peppers. That is absolutely delicious, well balanced flavors. Absolutely spot on. All right, thank you very much everyone for watching, and bye for now.